Welcome, and thank you all for standing by. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's conference call. At that point, if you would like to ask a question, you may press star followed by the number one. This call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this point. And now, I will turn the meeting over to your host, Mr. Michael Smith. Sir, you may now begin.
Thank you so much, Operator. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you on behalf of the My Brother's Keeper Task Force to today's College Access eSummit for My Brother's Keeper communities and partners. The content we're going to talk about today in today's eSummit is brought to you by our colleagues at Reach Higher and Better Make Room, First Lady Michelle Obama's College Access and Awareness Initiatives, which I know everyone knows about. Today's eSummit is going to focus on how communities and organizations can really best equip their students to enroll in and graduate from college using a range of new resources and tools. This event couldn't be held at a more appropriate time in the school year. As you all know, in September, students are coming back to school and starting to think about post-secondary education and about their futures. So now is the time to tap into those dreams and help them get there. Additionally, September is the White House's month of action to make sure that we're connecting students with resources for college access and affordability. So the administration is releasing all kinds of resources to support students' college journeys. We all, every single one of us, know the importance of college for all of our underserved kids, including boys and young men of color. You know the numbers. By the time of retirement, a college graduate earns $1 million more than a high school graduate. And, as the First Lady, a first-generation college graduate herself often says, post-secondary education is a personally impactful and transformative experience. But, as things currently stand, we've got less than 20% of Black and Latino men completing college, less than 20%, and 60% of low-income students expect to graduate college, but less than 15% actually do so. So at high schools serving low-income and minority students, there's a student-to-counselor ratio of 1,000 students for every school counselor. You got that? High schools in America, there's a student-to-counselor ratio of 1,000 students for every school counselor. But we're starting to see some remarkable progress, though, thanks to your efforts and those of others like you across the nation. The gap between white students and Black and Hispanic students receiving high school diplomas is shrinking, and among recent high school graduates, the vast majority of African American and Latino students enrolled in college. And so today's College Access eSummit is part of our efforts to support My Brother's Keeper communities and stakeholders, all of you, in your work to address the persistent opportunity gaps faced by boys and young men of color and to make sure all of our young people can reach their full potential. And I just really want to take a minute to thank the U.S. Department of Education, our colleagues, Reach Higher and Better Make Room for their support in preparing today's content. So going on to the next slide, I want to do some quick introductions of our distinguished guests for today's call. First, we have my colleague Eric Waldo, who is the Executive Director of First Lady Michelle Obama's Reach Higher initiative, which aims to inspire every student in the United States to take charge of their future by completing their post-secondary education, whether at a professional training program, a community college, or a 2-year or 4-year college or university. Previously, Eric was Deputy Chief of Staff at the Department of Education, where he helped lead and manage ED through President Obama's historic investment of $100 billion with a B dollars in education funding via the Recovery Act. Eric earned his JD from the University of Chicago Law School and a master's in education from Harvard University, and because he's an overachiever, an AB from Brown University. Our next speaker is Lena Shi, who is a policy advisor for the White House Domestic Policy Council. She previously was a Presidential Management Fellow and Research Analyst at the U.S. Department of Education for the Policy and Program Studies Office, Program Studies Service in the Office of Planning, Evaluation, and Policy Development. She earned both her Master of Public Policy degree and her bachelor's degree from UVA. And lastly, we have Ben Castleman, who's an assistant professor of education and public policy at the University of Virginia and a senior advisor to Better Make Room, where he runs the Up Next campaign. Ben's research applies insights from behavioral economics and social psychology to improve college access and success for low-income and non-traditional students. Ben is a graduate of Brown University and completed his doctoral work at Harvard. Before returning to graduate school, he was a public school teacher and administrator in Providence, Rhode Island. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric to talk to us about Reach Higher and Better Make Room. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Michael. And again, good afternoon, and thanks to everyone who could join today's call. We are so pleased and proud to be partnering with folks like Michael Smith and My Brother's Keeper work And obviously, all of our missions are still aligned, how we think about our most vulnerable communities and how to give them the opportunities that they need. If folks want to go to that first slide with a quote from the First Lady, Michelle Obama, from February 20th, 2015, I won't belabor and read the entire thing out loud, but you can see how the First Lady is describing that education is really the civil rights issue of our era, and that we know that all of our problems really can be solved if we are willing to invest in our most vulnerable students, if we're willing to give them the ladders of opportunity that we think education can provide. So the First Lady herself is a testament to this story, and she really believes in the fundamental power of education to transform lives, and that's why you've seen her dedicate not just her career at the White House to improving the lives of young people, but really it's the story of her entire life in public service. If you go to the next slide, you can see Reach Higher. This is our fun logo of a young person reaching up to the stars, and really that's what this is about. We want really all young people around this country to have an aspiration about higher education, to expect more of themselves. If you go to the next slide, you can see this is actually from our first event. The First Lady, when she launched Reach Higher, spoke at a college signing day rally in San Antonio, Texas, and the notion was that in 2009, the president set the goal for the entire administration around education. And he said, a generation ago, the United States led the world in terms of post-secondary completion, and now we're about 12th among industrialized nations. So other countries have been out-educating us. And the president said, if we want to continue to lead the world in the 21st century the way we've led it in the 20th, we need to have the most educated citizenry possible. And that means that, once again, the United States needs to lead the world in terms of college completion. And as Michael mentioned, our definition of college is not just a traditional four-year degree. We mean any education past high school, whether at a two-year degree, a four-year degree, a community college, an industry-recognized certificate or credential, but some education past high school is necessary to be competitive in the global knowledge-based economy. And the reason the First Lady did this work and took on this challenge is also because this is her own story. As Michael mentioned, the First Lady is a first-generation college graduate. When she speaks to young people, she talks about being the first in her family, she and her brother, to get a college degree. Neither of her parents went to college. Her folks were a middle-class family on the south side of Chicago, but she worked hard in public school. She was able to get into a place like Princeton, but she talks about her struggles even after she got there, and that without help, without transitional assistance, without the support of a community, she would be another statistic of someone who was not able to complete that degree. So she's out there talking to young people and pointing them towards the tools and things that they need to be successful in college. When I tell people about Reach Higher, I think the easiest way to understand it is the First Lady is the school counselor-in-chief for the entire country. If you go to the next slide, you see the picture of the First Lady and the President in their college gear. We're now at close to 3 years of the First Lady and the President working on Reach Higher, and you've seen things like, pushing a movement around National College Signing Day, where we take a day in the year where we celebrate college going the same way we celebrate athletes and celebrities. This past year, we had over 1,300 events in all 50 states. We've been bringing inspirational stories to the White House every year through our Beating the Odds Summit, where we bring in over 130 students every year who are rising college freshmen from around the country who are overcoming foster youth, homeless youth, rural, first generation, low income, special needs, you name it, students from around the country who are really beating the odds. And that story is because the First Lady said she was reading all the incredible stories in the clips about that student who goes from homeless to Harvard, or who has that experience of going from foster youth to a full ride at Georgetown. And she said, how can we bring those students to the White House? How can we recognize them the same way that we recognize heads of states and governors, and show them that this White House believes in them and believes in the promise of education? Lastly, one thing I want to talk about is that we've also recognized the importance of school counselors. You heard Michael Smith talk about some of the terrible ratios. On average, you've got about one counselor for every 471 students. That's about twice the recommended ratio, which is one for every 250 or so. In California, and for low-income students, it's one for every 1,000. When we talk about that, Ted Mitchell, the Undersecretary of Education, likes to say we have a math problem and we have a moral problem. So one of the things we've been working on, and one of the things we'll talk about in this call, are some of the tools that we've created to help level the playing field and make sure that students, even if they don't have that one-on-one school counselor, are able to get in line with those resources. Because we know for first-generation low-income kids, it's especially critical that they get exposure to a college campus through a mentor or through someone who's going to actually bring them onto a campus and show them what's possible. We know it's critical for those first-generation and low-income kids to actually get exposed to the FAFSA, to the free application for federal student aid, and apply to the $150 billion in federal student aid that's available. We know it's critical for those students to take rigorous classes while they're still in high school, whether it's through dual enrollment, early college, high school, or getting that opportunity just to experience a college-level class while still in high school, to give them the credit, the confidence, and make sure that when they show up to college on day one, they aren't part of those statistics of folks who have to take remedial classes and who get, unfortunately, disenchanted, frustrated, and drop out. So we're working really hard on this, and one of the things we've done is try to lift up the role of school counselors and what they can do. Through the President's efforts, we've had college opportunity summits where we've had commitments of tens of millions of dollars and are now going to see over 1 million more students apply and complete college and help those students access $5 billion more in federal student aid. So we're making progress, and that's in large part due to your hard work on the ground. If you go to the next slide, you can see it's a picture of the Better Make Room logo. Better Make Room was something we launched on October 19th of last year, of 2015. It's just less than a year old. If you go to the next slide, you see the First Lady with the picture of the Better Make Room logo on the White House grounds. And this is something where we realized with Reach Higher, we were making inroads with counselors and students, but really we did our research and realized that young people today, they're communicating in different ways than ever before. And if you want to have an effective campaign where we're getting more young people to go to and through college, we need to speak to them in their vernacular and meet them where they are and create demand at the student level. So we've been working to target those 14 to 19-year-old students. We've partnered with folks like YouTube, Snapchat, Vine, Instagram, use these social media partners to create effective messaging that's going to reach students where they are on their mobile devices, create a movement, and create a cultural moment. So through this, we've seen things like student commitments about education being posted literally in Times Square on billboards and banners. You've seen the First Lady debut her rap career with Saturday Night Live's Jay Pharoah. Last December, she worked with College Humor and actually had a viral video rap that was seen by tens of millions of people where the First Lady rapped about going to college. And we know it's important to create these memes that are not just about, pictures of food and fashion icons, but are in fact around messages around school and education. So we're working hard to do that. In a moment, we'll hear more about one of those tools, which is a text messaging app that we've launched that has the ability to reach students where they are, and we're able to get tens of thousands of students who are now going to be able to sign up for and get more messages and reminders about financial aid, about applying to college, about signing up for services that will make it much more likely that they'll complete college. Before I turn it over to my colleague Lena, I wanted to flag that next week the White House is doing an aggressive push for back to school with the President and the First Lady. And as part of that, we are sad to say it is the last official back to school season with the President and First Lady in office. And so we want to make this a big celebration, not just of our accomplishments, but of what we still have to do. So Lena can talk about, and we'll follow up with you with the website where you can follow up. But we are going to be putting that information and commitments from our partners who have made progress and who are committing to even more work. And so you'll see in a form that we'll follow up with you after this call, an opportunity where you can tell us what you're committing to do to help more students this fall sign up for financial aid through the FAFSA, to going to FAFSA.gov, helping more students sign up for the First Lady's text messaging platform up next by texting college to 44044 and getting access to the billions of dollars in federal student aid, and how we're helping more students sign up and use the College Scorecard at collegescorecard.ed.gov that helps more students actually understand in a simply presented way how to make a decision and compare colleges, which for too long has been confusing for families and students. So we'll follow up with you directly about that. But all of this is part of our movement with the First Lady, with the President, with the Department of Education about getting more and more students, especially our most vulnerable communities, to and through a post-secondary experience. With that, I'll turn it over to Lena, who's going to talk to you about a few more specifics about FAFSA and the scorecard.
Thanks so much, Eric, and hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining and for leading all of the tremendous work in your communities. We really enjoyed speaking with the MBK community back in the spring to preview the new resources that Eric mentioned about the FAFSA and the scorecard. Now that we're here at the college application season, I'll describe some more details about those tools and resources so that you and your communities can get started today. So these, the FAFSA changes and the college scorecard were announced by the president last fall. So the first announcement is that the FAFSA will be available starting on October 1st, which is in 10 days, and the college scorecard is available so that students can actually apply their aid to find a good value school where they can work hard and succeed. These resources altogether help us get closer to the common goal that we all share, which is to make sure that we're giving every hardworking student all the tools they need in order to succeed. Part of the equation on our side was doubling the investments in Pell Grants and tax credits. Because of that, over 2.5 million more students are accessing Pell Grants each year, and we've saved 10 million families $18 billion through the American Opportunity Tax Credit from this year alone. So to make sure that students can actually manage their student loans after college, we've also capped monthly student loan repayments at 10% of their income to make college more affordable. So on slide 10, this is really the first step to accessing any of these resources and this aid, which is completing the FAFSA, and as Eric mentioned, it's at FAFSA.gov. This one step can help students access nearly $6,000 in Pell scholarships, and for many students, it can mean the difference between going to school or not and completing school or not. We know that millions of students are currently missing out on federal financial aid, leaving billions of dollars on the table that can really help them enroll in and complete college. So that's why the President and the First Lady are committed to streamlining the FAFSA process even more, and that's why we're making it available 3 months earlier, beginning on October 1st, which is, as I mentioned, in 10 days. However, you don't have to wait until then to get started. At any point, students can get their FSA ID, which will stay with them as they access financial aid through college, and then after college, used to repay their student loans. We also have videos, background information, and other tutorials on the Department of Education's Financial Aid Toolkit, which is online, and that will send following this call. There are two key benefits from the shift to early FAFSA that I want to highlight. First is all students and families who have filed taxes last year will be able to retrieve and populate the FAFSA with that already verified income information directly from the IRS. So this saves students and families time and makes the FAFSA information that is submitted much more accurate. So this means that students and families don't have to send their tax information to the government twice. And second, given the earlier FAFSA, students and families will be able to get a clearer sense of their financial aid eligibility within a couple of days of filling out the FAFSA. So that means that they'll have a more reliable sense of how much they'll have to pay for college at the same time that they're searching for, applying to, and perhaps even selecting colleges. So altogether, these changes allow us to shift our precious hours spent on paperwork to towards more important things like student learning and advising and just supporting students throughout school. We also know that the majority of students who do complete the FAFSA end up only submitting their FAFSA to one school. So what that means is students might not necessarily be considering the whole range of options available to them. So if we turn to slide 11, this kind of previews the types of features available at the College Scorecard at collegescorecard.ed.gov. And the reason this resource exists for students and families is because we've actually worked side by side with students and families to create a tool that houses the information that they've said has been most useful and that they really need to be able to make informed college choices, and from our end to really support students to expand the scope of what's possible for them for college. As you can see from the slide, students can search schools based on what matters to them. So not just cost, but questions like, am I likely to graduate? Am I likely to be able to repay my loans? And after school, am I able to find a good paying job? Students can also compare results and do a deeper dive at each of the schools that they're considering, and even discover schools that they never considered before. So all of these resources are free and available. We'll follow up with an email that includes links to all of these. And with your help in connecting students with them, they are much more powerful and meaningful for students. That's also why we're really excited about resources like Up Next, which help connect students to the College Scorecard and the FAFSA and provide step-by-step support and advising so that students can actually complete the FAFSA and find a good value school. So with that, I'll turn it over to Professor Ben Castleman, who's a senior advisor to the Better Make Room campaign.
Thank you so much, Lena, and very appreciative of the opportunity to be with you all today and to share about the Up Next campaign. I want to acknowledge first and foremost the tremendous investment and leadership that the Better Make Room team, Don, you, the director of Better Make Room, and Kristen Kruger and their colleagues have provided as well as Eric and the Retire team in bringing Up Next to bear. So I'm very, very privileged to have the opportunity to work with a great team to bring this forward. So we can go on to the next slide. So at the highest level, Up Next is a mobile messaging campaign designed to provide young Americans across the country with information, encouragement, and access to one-on-one advising assistance as they navigate complex but very important decisions around college and financial aid. So for high school seniors, decisions like where to apply and how to access financial aid. For current college students, resources like adjusting to campus and renewing financial aid. And then certainly for our graduates and students who have left college, important decisions about how they repay their loans. Next slide, please. As I just alluded to, we have 3 primary campaigns that we are starting Up Next with this fall, and I do want to emphasize the word starting. I think Better Make Room has done tremendous work building out a plan for campaigns like Up Next to continue and expand after the administration, but it was very important to us to start with a very strong foundation. And so we're focusing on 3 particular populations of students. One is high school seniors, as I mentioned. The campaign for high school seniors actually began just over a week ago, and over the next several months, we'll provide students with guidance around college search, completing the FAFSA, and completing their college applications, directing them to the resources that Lena showed you, like the College Scorecard and some of the FAFSA support resources, as well as others. Second, we have a campaign for current college students that focuses on making use of campus resources, adjusting to college life, and then, of course, renewing their FAFSA. And then finally, a campaign for college graduates or recent leavers that focuses on providing students with information to make informed decisions about which repayment plan they chose, and certainly with attention to making sure students are aware of options to explore income-driven repayment plans, where the amount that a student pays per month is based on their income. While the campaign is very much student-facing in how we've designed it, we also actively encourage parents and school counselors to sign up. And so that way they can be informed of the same information we're providing to their students and their children, and with the hopes that those counselors and parents can support their children and certainly expand our reach. As you can see on the image in the right-hand screen, we've tried to make signing up for Up Next incredibly simple and straightforward. All a student or an educator or a parent has to do is text the word college, which you can see in the upper right in the green, to the number 44044. You can then see all through their phone, through text messaging, we both confirm that this is something they want to sign up for, ask them a series of very, very short intake questions to make sure we get them on the right campaign. We want to send the right content to a high school senior versus to a student in college, of course. And then this takes about 5-6 seconds to complete, and then they begin receiving the actual campaign. Next message, please. Next slide, please. Next message. So we wanted to give you a glimpse inside what Up Next looks like. And so this is a screenshot from an actual what the messages would look like on your iPhone. And some of you may already be signed up, so you would have already gotten a couple of messages. You can see on the left, we're both affirming the great steps that a student has taken by starting to apply to college, and we might have learned that from an earlier message, and then asking them whether they're ready to start the FAFSA. we prompt them to reply yes or no, and you can see in this case the student wrote back yes. We again affirm them for taking a great step, and then we prompt them to learn more about the benefits of filing the FAFSA early. As Lena mentioned, this is a very important change where students can now start the FAFSA and complete the FAFSA as of October 1st. And then we walk them through a series of steps. So as Lena mentioned, one of the first and most important steps to take is to create a FAFSA ID, an FSA ID at FAFSA.gov. So you can see in the context of this message, we're providing students with information and concrete actionable steps they can take with college or financial aid. In the middle message, you can see one of the things we're trying to do with Up Next is design the campaign in a way that's going to really engage students so that the information we provide effectively reaches them. So with many of our messages, we are embedding images and creatively designed infographics right into the text message that students receive. This is a student who said they don't yet have a list of colleges that they plan to apply to, and so we give them some steps of what to take. So beginning their search either based on where they want to live or what they want to study, giving them some guidance of applying to a broad range of schools, and then directing them to go to the college scorecard to learn more about these school options, including a screenshot of the scorecard so they have some sense of what it will look like, and hopefully that helps motivate them. And then finally, on the right-hand side, you can see a message that provides students with information that there are, for an increasingly broad segment of the student borrower population, there are options available that students can explore to lower their monthly payments, asking if students are interested in those, norming the fact that there are many borrowers out there that choose income-driven plans, and then providing students with additional information, both about how income-driven plans operate, and then subsequently giving them additional information on how to explore those options at studentloans.gov. Next slide, please. One of the things we are most appreciative of is the partnership from several of the largest and most evidence-based college advising organizations in the country. So many students have the opportunity to get free one-on-one college advising via text message from actual real-life college advisors working across the country at College Possible, College Advising Corps, College Forward, and Inside Track. I should emphasize that every aspect of Up Next is free for the student. They don't have to pay to sign up. They certainly don't need to pay for the advising. And you can see here, this is a real life interaction. A student texted in a question, what if I'm undocumented or a friend of mine is? That's a message that the Better Make Room team flagged to get routed to an advising organization. The advising organization, the advisor reassures the student, offers them help, asks them what state they will be graduating from in high school. The student says New York, and you can see the advisor provides New York-specific information for the student about options that might be available to them to reduce the cost of college. So while we are doing this with tens of thousands of students at a national scale, and we certainly hope to expand from there, we're also trying to make this very personal. And when students need help or have questions, connecting them directly to a highly trained advisor who can provide assistance. Next slide, please. One of the things we want to make sure to reiterate is that Up Next is built on a very strong evidence base for the potential of these types of text messaging campaigns to generate substantial and really quite large improvements in students' college outcomes. And so the results you see here are from experimental studies that my colleagues and I have done, assessing the impact of text campaigns designed to improve FAFSA completion, to help students enroll in college, and to persist. And what you can see, the orange in this set of slides are students who we sent the text messages to. The blue are students in the context of those studies who were in a control group and didn't get the messages. And whether it's FAFSA completion, messaging students the summer after high school with information about tasks they need to complete in order to successfully matriculate, or messaging college freshmen to remind them to renew their financial aid, these campaigns generate substantial double-digit increases often in the share of students that complete FAFSA, go to college, or successfully persist in college. Next slide, please. As I said before, and I believe this is our final slide, we are aware that students are very busy, school personnel, community personnel are very busy, and so we tried to design the enrollment process for Up Next to be as streamlined and simple as possible. Literally, we invite any of you on the call to try this yourselves by texting the word college to 44044. We tried to design this in a way that it would take 10 seconds or fewer for students to sign up. And we certainly would benefit from your partnership and collaboration in promoting Up Next and this simple enrollment process to any of the students, educators, schools, communities in which you work. We would like, as Eric said earlier, the overriding goal of Better Make Women Reach Higher is to support every young American to pursue post-secondary educational aspirations. And we certainly see Up Next as an important strategy, an important tool to provide students with the information, encouragement, and assistance to achieve their post-secondary educational aspirations. And this is largely, I think, building on the comments I just made, but I did want to return to a point that a week from this Friday, on Friday, September 30th, we will be hosting the second in a series of Up Next Day of Actions where we are asking for schools, communities, organizations across the country to partner with the First Lady's team in office, with our celebrity partners and influencers to promote Up Next, to encourage students to sign up, and again, to receive this helpful and timely information. And we've made available an Up Next Day of Action toolkit in order to learn, for your school organization to learn more about how you can get involved and support students to sign up for this campaign.
Great. Thank you, Ben. This is Eric again on the line. So I think at this point, we're happy to take questions if you want to ask about the Up Next tool, the new FAFSA pieces, college scorecard, or anything else with the President and First Lady's back-to-school agenda around education. Operator, if you could give the instructions for asking a question, we'll hang tight until we get any in the queue.
Certainly, sir. Thank you. We'll now begin the question and answer session. To our participants, if you would like to ask a question over the phone, please press star followed by the number 1. And please record your name slowly and clearly when prompted. And to cancel your request, you may just press star 2. One moment, speakers, as we wait for the questions to queue up.
While we're waiting for any folks who want to ask questions, again, this is Eric. I just want to thank everyone for joining the call and remind folks we're really proud and excited of the partnership that we've created, and I think you've heard the President and the First Lady talk about this with respect to all of their work, but that this is not something that is going to end after the President and First Lady leave office. We are determined to keep this work going because the effort to get more students to access more opportunity through education otherwise is something the President and First Lady have said will be the work of their lives. So we thank you for your partnership, and we're really appreciative. Operator, do we have any questions?
We have one question coming from the line of Bridget. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Hello, thank you. I work at a museum, and I do a lot of education there, and I work with students, a lot of high school students who are underserved or at risk, teaching design and giving them accessibility to museums. For these, I just tried out this texting, so I'm learning about it through experience, but do you have any recommendations for what I can give them or what information you think that I should pass on to them, if it's just texting or something else?
Thanks, Bridget. This is Eric, and others should chime in. I think, in the first instance, you can always send folks to bettermakeroom.org. That's the site of the Better Make Room campaign, which has links to multiple resources. Similarly, reachhigher.gov has a slew of resources around accessing financial aid, scholarships, and making decisions. I think the advantage of encouraging your students or the folks you work with to sign up for the texting campaign, the Text College campaign, as you did, is that by doing that, it's not limited to whether or not they are going to affirmatively go somewhere. Once they've signed up, then they, throughout the year, the months, the weeks, will get updates that will point them towards resources. So one of the things is whether or not they'll get, access, assuming what age they are, about, reminders about signing up for the SAT, ACT, and then, sending them to a free resource like Khan Academy. So that's one of the ways that you can achieve and access multiple sets of resources. But I do think, in terms of good sites with lots of resources, you, of course, have reachhigher.gov, bettermakeroom.org, FAFSA.gov, and really, signing up for that hexing campaign. The last part, of course, as Lena mentioned, is collegescorecard.ed.gov. All of our resources link to those, but that's where you also, as a service provider, becoming familiar with those tools is really helpful, because then you're someone who can walk a student through the choice of, here's the difference between going to Penn State versus going to UPenn, and thinking about, is it actually better for a student like that? And the great thing about these resources is you can really break it down in a very simple way for, an ASVAB male from this area, of this income quartile. Are students graduating? Are they able to pay back their debt? And that's helping students make those really difficult decisions.
Great. And College Scorecard is kind of what has a lot of the information to answer those questions.
That's right. Collegescorecard.ed.gov lets you do that comparison shopping. And again, by signing up for things like Up Next, we point people towards those resources, and we use the calendar as a prod, depending on what intake we get about the student, about where they are in their decision point, to point them in towards those resources. And I think, as Ben mentioned, we do have partners who are some of the key college access providing groups who can help. If students do have questions, that they do write back to make sure that they can eventually get a hold of a real person if they need additional help, and not just getting that nudge on the margin.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Of course.
And Bridget, this is Ben Councilman. I will ask my colleagues Don or Kristen to elaborate if I'm incomplete in this. But I believe the Up Next Day of Action Toolkit also has a variety of promotional resources. So posters you could hang in the museum, media you could put out through social media that both provide some additional information, but also just advertise the text college to 44044 information, so that a student who might be, or a young person who might be walking through your museum, in the event you didn't have the opportunity to talk to them directly, could still learn about the campaign.
That's great. And I go outside of the museum to teach in a lot of different environments that I think I could take that toolkit to as well. So thank you.
Thank you. At this time, there are no more questions on queue. But once again, to our participants, if you would like to ask a question, you may press star followed by the number 1. And please record your name clearly when prompted. Your name is required to introduce your question. And to cancel, you may just press star 2.
Thank you, operator. And as operator mentioned, press star 1 to ask questions. And that goes for folks, if you're watching online and are trying to ask a question through the webinar portal, please know you have to ask your question on the conference line. So please make sure that you're doing that by pressing star 1, as the operator mentioned, and then we can answer your question from the webinar portal.
We have one question from the line of Mary. Your line is now open, ma'am.
Hi, I just have a question. I actually text into the app, like it already. Just a couple of questions. So we actually work with young people that are in high school or in college, and then there are some with that gap that graduated from high school but not yet enrolled in college. And I wanted to know, with the information that is being distributed through the app, how different is that, and which one of the targeted population would service our young people who actually have not enrolled into college yet but completed high school?
This is Ben Castleman. That's a tremendous question. Thank you for asking. I think that what we are calling the high school senior campaign, what you could tell the members of your community, option A, is probably most appropriate, in that it provides guidance to that population about how they can apply to college, how they could, well, first and foremost, how they can use tools like the scorecard to find colleges that might be a good fit for their interests and goals at that point in their lives. It also, that campaign provides guidance on how those students can apply for financial aid for which they might be eligible, and then certainly additional guidance around applying to college. So it's a tremendous question, and we do very much want to communicate with and support students who have left secondary school but who might be interested in pursuing post-secondary education.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be coming from the line of Miss Mary Alice Adams. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Thank you. This is Mary Alice Adams calling from the city of Benton Harbor. I know that we want to encourage the children to go to college, but is vocational considered secondary? And if so, what is in all of this for those that choose not to go to college but need that secondary education in the form of some type of vocational training to put them on a career path?
Thanks, Mary. This is Eric Waldo. Absolutely. So when we talk about college, and I hope I said this at the top, the president's definition, the first lady's definition, the administration's definition is an education past high school, whether it's a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, a community college, a certificate, a credential. I think very much in what you're talking about in terms of a vocational certificate that's going to lead towards, a job. And so that absolutely counts as what we consider college and post-secondary under our definition. And in terms of what students are getting in encouragement otherwise, the resources we talked about, whether it's FAFSA, whether it's helping students think about the steps they need to take for post-secondary, the Texan campaign will give them those steps and tools. And similarly with the scorecard, you are able to research not just four-year colleges, but also usually the community colleges that are offering those technical and vocational certificates, so students are able to compare and do that. But we very much want it to be not just about students who think, oh, you must mean I'm only going to a four-year university. In fact, just so for folks on the line who want to know, the First Lady last year launched something called the Reach Higher Career App Challenge. We worked with the Department of Education and had a $250,000 prize for folks who are working on apps that are going to help connect high school students to career and technical programs. The winner was announced just this past August. It's an app called Hats and Ladders by Think Zone Games. We're very much thinking about how we can make sure more students are accessing post-secondary, and that absolutely has to include vocational and technical degrees. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Our next question will be coming from the line of Mr. Nor Panak. Sir, your line is now open.
Well, thank you, guys, for giving us this opportunity to partake in this dialogue. I have two questions regarding FAFSA, particularly as it relates to the completion of the forms. And I'm going to speak both from a professional and personal experience because my son just matriculated into his D3 campus on a scholarship. But one of the things that many of the students that we serve have approached me with is the many touch points that it takes to really complete the FAFSA application online. There's not a lot of support usually at the senior level from high school counselors because there are not a lot of high school counselors that really actually participate in this process. One, how can that be better? And two, is there going to be a mechanism that will consolidate FAFSA so you don't have to go to multiple sites in order to submit one application? And then secondly, the employment verification or parent verification. It's seemingly many institutions have different ways by which they would like to verify the information that they get downloaded from FAFSA. But what I'm seeing is that there are some institutions that say, well, we want to verify what you have on FAFSA, and there's other institutions of higher learning that said, well, we don't really care about that. But not the case. That oftentimes lends itself to either a decrease of award money or, in some cases, an elimination of it altogether. So can you kind of address those kind of questions?
Sure. Thank you for your question, and also congratulations to your son on his education. Sounds very exciting. So on the FAFSA, from day one, we have worked to really streamline the process so that a student and a family member can go to FAFSA.gov, and that should be the primary entryway to complete the form. And there's plenty of support on the financial aid toolkit that we can follow up with that provides tutorials on exactly step-by-step what you need to do to complete the FAFSA, has frequently asked questions to kind of respond to the types of things that we're hearing from students and families like yourselves, and also shows the different types of myths or misperceptions about the FAFSA completion process. The good news is that we know that in the majority of states, students and families only need to complete the FAFSA, and this information will be sent directly to states and schools, and that will be the primary and the only form that they have to complete. In other cases, we are also working with states to continue streamlining the process. The good news is that the FAFSA toolkit, financial aid toolkit, also has some step-by-step information about where you can contact for different pieces of information about certain states, kind of links to each of those websites, and if there's a particular question that I can follow up with, let me know and I can direct you to the best contact there. I also think that the Up Next tool is really helpful in helping fill that void that you just mentioned, which is, you have a student who might not necessarily have the typical resources or the support on hand. How do we really make sure that they are able to get their questions answered quickly? And aside from all the tools that are already published on the Department of Ed website, we think that the Up Next tool is really helpful in kind of being there for the student at pretty much at their fingertips whenever they need the answers to their questions.
Okay, and what about the verification? That some colleges have said, well, we need to verify your income, although they're getting the income from the IRS retrieval tool. And that sometimes is puts families and students in a situation where, well, this is one school asking for verification. Here's another school not asking for verification, especially if you're just trying to, kind of spread your net wide when you're going through the college recruitment process. So who actually does that?
That's a great question. So the main motivation behind the IRS data retrieval tool is to make sure that the very first time that the FAFSA is completed, we're getting the right and the accurate information from the get-go. And so with increased use of the IRS DRT data retrieval tool, we know that those students and families will not need to be verified because the IRS has already done that in the past. So the increased use of the IRS data retrieval tool this year especially should be able to cut down tremendously on the amount of verification needed. So what we're projecting is that this year colleges will be able to save about 3 million hours on verification alone, and students and families will also be able to save millions of hours just from repeated paperwork or going back through the FAFSA.
So
I'll mention is that the students that do get flagged for verification will not be flagged for directory information, so incorrect addresses or names misspellings. We're really trying to focus the verification policies on the types of submissions that are likely to significantly change the financial aid awards to students. And the good news is that I think the Department of Education has created a system and a plan to make sure that students who are most likely to benefit from financial aid are not disproportionately disadvantaged in this verification process.
Yes, that's usually helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be coming from the line of Danny. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Thank you. We were wondering if you have any information you can share with us with regard to retention initiatives that have resulted in or could result in increases in graduation rates.
So obviously that's a great question and certainly a broad one. One of the things we talk about a lot here, and I'll also defer to anyone else on the call who wants to talk, with respect to retention rates in high school and also trying to avoid summer melt. One of the things that we do is around dual enrollment in early college high school, which I think I touched on before, especially what we think are our most vulnerable students. Oftentimes they're citing a reason for dropping out as actually feeling bored and feeling like that what they're learning in school does not have applicability to their future life. More and more research is being shown that by giving students the opportunity to take college-level courses while they're in high school, they're able to get the confidence, the credit, go to a college campus, meet a college professor, create some of those near peer relationships with current college students and see that what they previously may have thought was, oh, college or post-secondary is for other people, for rich people, for people who don't look or sound like me, is actually something that not only do they have enthusiasm for, but actually can really be successful at. So, in fact, many schools, recently Cleveland and Baltimore launched a early college high school with Bard College, which is giving students actually an opportunity for their last 2 years of high school to essentially get an associate's degree from Bard College, so they're graduating with a post-secondary, which again on the back end is going to reduce the cost of college if they want to keep pursuing a post-secondary degree. That's just one example of the countless. I know Ben Castleman's research is specifically around summer melt retention using texting, but Ben, you can speak more to that.
Well, I think I think, Eric, I agree with very much with your response, and it's a great question. Honestly, I think that we have, up until the last few years, and I certainly think the Obama administration deserves substantial credit for this, but up until the last few years, much of our focus as researchers was on strategies to improve college access, and so we did a lot of work evaluating programs to get students to college. I think more recently, again, with the much credit to President Obama and the First Lady for drawing attention to the importance of college completion, we've now, as researchers, focused more on demonstrating the impact of efforts to improve college persistence. I don't think at this point we have as much evidence about, at least a broad range of strategies that have a clear evidence base for improving college completion, but I certainly think that's a direction in which research is expanding. I will say that one population that I think we're starting to focus in more and more as a concrete example is students who complete substantial shares of the credits they need to graduate, but then withdraw before earning a degree. So that's a population that research is kind of identified as again, is making a lot of progress, running into either financial challenges or academic or bureaucratic challenges that we are now devoting more work to support to move towards degrees. So it's a great question, and I think the academia and the research field is moving much more to focus on completion, again, largely as a product of the Obama administration's emphasis on substantially improving the share of young people in the country that earn degrees over the next decade.
And operator, I think we have time for one more question.
Thank you. At this point, there are no further questions, sir.
Great. Michael Smith, are you still with us? Do you want to close this out?
I am. I just want to say thank you so much to Eric, Lena, and Ben for being with us on the call today, sharing these incredible resources, and just for all the work that you do all year long on behalf of our kids. As it was already mentioned, more resources and information are available on all of these college access tools. Shire and Better Make Room will be sending out an email soon after this call about how to get connected to those resources. So please note, though, that this resource email will only be going to those who registered for today's webinar. So if you have not registered, please do so right now. The registration link is still active. And remember, September is the White House's month of action on college access and affordability. And keep in mind that there will be an Up Next Day of action on September 30th, 2016, when schools, organizations, and communities across the country will be getting students signed up for Up Next. So make sure to get connected to the resources covered in today's call to best support college enrollment and attainment in your communities. Thank you for all the work that you're doing in our My Brother's Keeper communities, and also thanks Julie Hines for being the behind-the-scenes organizer and making this all possible today. Have a great rest of the week, everybody. Bye-bye.
And that concludes today's conference. Thank you all for participating. You may now disconnect.